And I guess for the rest, ladies and gentlemen, this is amazing. Really, it's a great honor to be here and a real surprise. And for you who have just worked very hard to get your degree, you must wonder what's the trick, you know? This guy just like standing here and just gets a degree just for being himself or something like this. And so there's no trick, really. Now, I remember participating in a conference, and they had high school students introduce us, and these high school students before the conference were talking to us, to prepare how to introduce us. And someone asked, and one of them asked me, how do you become a famous learning theorist? And I was like, you just chug along, You just focus on the question that's important to you and try to make sense of it. And for me, my question was, how can we make sense of human learning, taking into account that we are fundamentally social beings? And that question is still alive in me, It's not like I have finished. I still live with that question. And it animates me, and it makes me wonder, like, what's happening here? Who are we? What are we doing together? And the concept of community of practice that has been mentioned a few times, it became important because it touched that quest, And you could define the concept of community of practice as a theoretical concept, as the simplest structure where learning can be understood as a social phenomenon. And then our identity as we belong to these communities, as the place where we develop an experience of knowledgeability. And so, what's the big deal here? There's something both very fundamental about this concept and something very familiar. You probably belong to many of those communities. And I remember a graduate student, we were having a discussion online, and so he asked me, wait a minute, but this really seems common sense. What am I missing? And my response is, you're not missing anything. This is fundamentally common sense. And there is something comforting, perhaps, in the idea that a theory that's about us is kind of recognizable by us. I guess, perhaps, it might be worth pointing out that there are different ways to produce knowledge. There are different ways to produce understanding. Perhaps the best understood in the academe is to have a methodology that allows you to access information that is not available to daily life, right? So, you calculate the age of the universe, and you come up with what, 15 billion years or something like that, huh? That's not something that's available to us as a piece of information. We need a special methodology to do that. Same thing about statistics about the usage of mobile phone in Africa. I think that what I've been doing in my life is a different enterprise. I don't think that I've produced something that people don't know. I think what I've done is to create a way to talk about our experience in ways that help people make sense of what they're doing. And so yes, the concept of community of practice is a very common sense idea. But it helps you see learning in a way that traditional cognitively based theories do not. And perspective matters because it changes the way that you look at the world. It changes the way that you understand what needs to be done. If you're a teacher and you think that knowledge is just stuff that you can put in a book, then your role as a teacher is to take this curriculum put students in a classroom and as efficiently as possible transfer that stuff from the book to those brains, and then go forth and apply. If you think that knowledge is something that exists within the practice of specific communities, then you understand your role as a teacher differently. You think, oh, then what I need to do is to give my students a sense of what it is to see the world that way. I have to invite my student in an experience of what it is to know things that way, to be a physicist, to be a physiotherapist, to be whatever community you are aspiring to explore. And in that case, a key resource is your own identity, is your own experience of membership. And the beautiful thing about us as human beings is that we can open who we are. We can open our identities to each other, invite each other in, and let us be, for a moment, something that we are not yet. And I will tell you one thing, all the teachers that have had an influence on me have done that. They've invited me into their way of being in the world. They've invited me into their passion. They've invited me into their identity. They've opened a new window to me. And I've seen the world differently ever since. So, how you understand learning can actually make a big difference as to how you proceed when learning is an important topic. And so, that's why for me it's actually very significant that I received this honorary degree from this university. First, for the small history, because my partner, Beverly Trainer, is somewhere in the room here, is actually a graduate, 28 years ago, graduate from this university. And she is, one of the brightest people I know, so they are a little gold star for Brighton. But also, because of this vision of a university as embedded in a community. And I think that's very significant to me. Because my theory would predict that knowledge exists in all the different practices that are relevant to a topic. There is not a privileged place of knowledge, like the university produces knowledge and the rest of the world takes it and applies it. The theory is, there are different practices that develop different forms of knowledge ability. And so the university, if you believe that, again, a different perspective, has to find its place. What is the place of the university? In that system of knowledge where there's a lot of knowledge everywhere. Different kinds of knowledge. And so it was told that I had been involved with the Community University Partnership Program with Professor Angie Hart and other people here. And so I was invited to a meeting of a committee of practice that they had developed. So because for them they're using the concept of committee of practice not only to understand this sort of distribution of knowledge in the world, but also to intervene in that system. It was an interesting committee of practice. It was about child resilience for children with complex needs. And in that room you had people from very, very different practices. You had people from research, you had professional practitioners who see children, you had parents, and it was interesting to see how forming a learning system among those people required quite a bit of work, quite a bit of negotiation. So is your knowledge relevant to mine? Are you going to float off into your academic jargon? And the academics would say, well, but you're just a parent, I'm sure you don't know the difference between epistemology and ontology. So, should I be listening to you? And so what was very interesting then was that the intention to form a community of practice together created an ethic of trust and engagement. Okay, we're going to engage with each other. We're We can explore each other's knowledge and find how our different forms of knowledge can be made relevant to each other. And to me, I was like, oh, this is a miracle. You know? Because I really believe, and my theory would also predict that this is a really, really important step on the planet where we live today. That we have to learn how to find the relevance of different forms of knowledge to each other. This is really an important endeavor. And so it's a real honor for me to accept this honorary degree from a university that has had the courage to say we're going to try that, we're going to explore that, we're going to pioneer this process. So, thank you very much.